Hello. I was asked to give a look at this operation replay that is uploaded as a YouTube upload. So I'm just going to kind of do a live reaction to this real quick because it's 11:30 at night. And I'm here, so sure, we'll look at it. I'm going to run it at ×2 speed probably, just so we can go through it a little faster. So let me alter this to, well, maybe 1.5. Okay, so first off, he's going to talk about, first off, he has an intro where he talks about he's going to play the Securyu, he's going to look at some equipment. Initially, the equipment setup is for secondary batteries, which is okay. Ops, especially the higher tier ops, people have been reporting that, higher tier ships have a lot of AA, and when they spawn in a group, that's even more AA. It's a lot. So he's got, if we check back here, secondaries and secondaries, which is fine. If your planes are not able to shoot, well, your secondaries are. There was a recent CV test that was performed where CVs had manual secondaries, which would be useful if you were trying to deal with 2 or 3 ships that are on top of each other and they just have that massive amount of pooled AA. So in this case, this is the available route that the Securyu has. So yeah, running some secondaries and stuff. And he does point out that 30 millimeters of pen is pretty nice. I don't think the Securyu's accuracy is stupendous. It's not really made to be that way, but still, having guns that are shooting at stuff is better than not having guns shooting at stuff. So taking out your secondary range to 11 kilometers, cool. Doing the thing, cool. I think probably has the flag as well, which is rockin'. It is worth pointing out that the Securyu has rockets, torps, and bombs. She is basically a Hakuryu with bonus stuff. She's got tactical squadrons because she is a super ship. But rockets, torps, and bombs are all capable. And then we've got a little extra stuff. So I'm going to get through this equipment section. I don't have any issues with this. The only thing I would say is that concealment and operations I don't think is going to be extremely important. And we're going to talk about that in the commander build as well. You are going into a pre-created scenario where you know where the enemies are. Now, obviously, if the enemies appear from a spawn point and you are in a situation where you're just flat broadside to them, if those enemies appear and they decide to target you with some AP, that could make for a really bad day if your detection being flared out that wide to get you straight up and killed. I don't know how many operations that has as an issue, though. I could, of course, be wrong. I'm not super studied on the topic, but having the larger detection, detection is really big in PvP because you can play around your detection rating where if you're playing, say, 1 kilometer further away from the enemy front line with your detection, then you can open fire, you can shoot, and should you take too much, you get lit on fire 3, 4 fires, oh my god, and then use your damage control, and then you're on fire again. Maybe now is not the time to continue the fight. Maybe you need to give it a few moments. Well, technically fire would flare your detection, so maybe that 1 kilometer away is a little too close. But for example purposes, if you are at a distance where you can go dark, then you can choose to go dark. You can stop firing. You can let your detection come back in from your maximum gun range, go dark, wait a little time for your damage con to come back up, wait a little time for your repair to come back up, wait a little time for the enemy to focus on other targets, other teammates, so that you can then rejoin the battle. Whereas in an operation, the bots are going to be shooting. They're going to be hurting stuff all operation. And the general, I would say, meta concept for operations is to go in there and blow everything up. Now, obviously, we have some new tiers. Those new bots have different levels of health, which can be a lot. It can be pretty hard, but that also means that your team probably needs to be firing, shooting on cooldown, which CVs have expressed some frustration with because that AA is pretty powerful. So just a few things here. This is going to increase your AA, which is nice if they're enemy planes. It's also going to increase your secondary output, but secondary is not the focus of this CV line. The German CV line, the Richthofen, has some secondaries you can dial into. Graf Zeppelin is obviously tier 8. She's got some secondaries which are super accurate. But the Japanese secondaries, not the mainstay of the line. So one other thing is, instead of taking the secondaries and getting 15% additional output, if you are really concerned about health, which we are going to see that is a concern, you can take plane health here and make all of your planes a little faster, which means you get through the AA a little faster, meaning take less damage, or just straight up give them more health, which means having more health means hopefully will mitigate some losses. But in terms of interactions, if you're dialing for more pew pew than plain pew, sure, whatever, do the thing. I would recommend probably going into torpedoes, because the torps are going to have a heal. But that's just personal preference. The IJN torps are pretty scary, and having a heal on them means that the more health that they have, the more healing they get per tick, which means the more likely that they can combat the incoming AA. We'll talk about that, I think, in the opening part of the match. I haven't watched the full video, but I have watched some of it. Okay, so continuing, there's going to be popping over to look at the commander skill, and here we have secondary stuff. I mean, we've already dialed into secondary stuff on the equipment screen, so it's no surprise to see it here. And again, if you want to do that, okay. There is one thing that stands out, which is Hidden Menace. So Hidden Menace, again, is working on this detection theory of trying to make your stuff a little stealthier. And I get it in terms of PvP. PvE, though, in operations, I don't necessarily know if that's the big thing. Again, unless there's an operation where you spawn, we're having terrible tastic detection. You know, battleship size detection could get you spotted where you're in a broadside position and you've got incoming AP shells that could just wipe you off the map. And I don't think that's the case. If it is, obviously, then please correct me. But if not, then it just means you're detected by bots that are going to be shooting at you or shooting at somebody else. So if they're shooting anyway, you being detected is not really going to change that. Now, it could be also that keeping yourself dark has some advantages because you are not a battleship. Battleships have healing. CV hulls do not. That and CV hulls are take quite a lot of damage from fires, in the sense that they only last 5 seconds, but they deal 5% of your hull damage in that, which means you can only take 20 fires before you are dead, even if you take no damage otherwise. So outside of having that long damage con, fires could really be a threat if you have bots that are continually just locked onto your hull and they're after you. Anyway, I would get rid of Hidden Menace for that reason, for the detection, and also resource concerns. Because one of the things that Hidden Menace has is, while your planes are, after they have attacked, or once you've recalled them, they enter a returning state, which means they go 50% slower. Now, they do mention in the skill that you have a continuous damage, which will, you reach immunity to continuous damage twice as quickly as normal. So that half return speed, you end up going immune at basically the same amount of time. So there's not really a change there, but you do go slower, which means you are more vulnerable to flak. And depending on where you recall, if you recall in enemy ships' flak areas, you could see a whole bunch of very healthy planes get pummeled down. So that is a concern. You need to make sure that if you want that additional stealth, you are playing around that flak concern. So you need to make sure you're recalling outside of flak areas or inside of flak areas, which means recalling within 3.5 kilometers of an enemy ship, because it will not generate flak up close. And the continuous damage will be heavy, because continuous is going to be much heavier the closer you are. The bullets are more accurate. There's more bullets and they're more accurate, so to speak, just as layman's terms. So there's definitely continuous threat, but you will go immune to continuous at roughly the same pace as if you didn't have Hidden Menace. So, I mean, technically there's not a change in that outcome. So anyway, I would definitely drop this. You might go over to additional flak reduction if, again, we're hoping to nurture plane health, or just find something else seasoned to taste. If you like providing spotting, which I think on the first run, because again I haven't watched this, but the first action here did drop a fighter for spotting. You can take the 2-pointer and get an additional fighter on each of your active squads. That's an additional 3 consumables for the duration of the operation, which can be helpful. You could move it into dialing up torp capability, have the closer arming time, have a little longer. Also, you can get a heal. You can make that the heal that you do have, you can give yourself an extra heal, and you can make the heal that you have last 10% longer. Not to be underestimated. Does not suck. So you could move this just directly into these two, or, I mean, season to taste. Pick what you want. You could go with some fires, which will work with the secondaries. as well as I suppose, yeah, your rocket planes. But again, yeah, seasoned to taste. But this, I think, is definitely a concern if you were worried about losing resources. All right, so captain skills. As far as talking about reducing continuous and increasing health, absolutely, you do this. You do this at 6 points. You do this. You will always need more resources as a CV. You just do. There are some people that will fight over the usefulness of the regen. I will always believe in the usefulness of the regen, not because it gives you quote unquote more planes, because over the course of a match it might result in one additional rocket plane, one additional bomber, or whatever, but it gives you resources slightly faster. You'll get the first plane, say, 5 seconds faster. You'll get the second regen plane 10 seconds faster than if you didn't have the skill. The next one 15, the next one 20 seconds earlier in the match than you would have otherwise gotten it, which means when you're in the middle of the match, you are potentially one less plane on fumes, while you're trying to nurture your resources. So we're going to get through the captain skills section. We go into a battle start. This looks like Raptor Rescue. Raptor Rescue has a CV. I don't know if you can see my mouse pointer, but maybe I'll just, whatever. Raptor Rescue has a CV that you are escorting, or rather, you are getting to a CV to fix it to then escort it off the map. And there are bad guys that spawn along the way. I'm fairly sure this has 2 or 3 different spawn patterns, so it's a little dynamic. It's not just purely the same spawn patterns every time. But one of the things that's always going to happen is over at A7, they're going to get 2 ships. I think it's a battleship and a cruiser, and we should see something like that. So we're going to start this off, and the first thing he's going to take is the bombers. So 2 things here, because I was asked to comment as a CV player. 2 things here. The bombers have 12 planes, which is great for repeat interactions. If you think about AA, not in terms of, my ship shoots planes or whatever, try to think of AA as a CV player, as a resource person. Think of it as, how many planes do I lose to make an attack? And it's very possible for IJN bombers to lose 2 to 4 planes per attack, which means if you have 12, let's say you lose 3 and you would attack with 3, and then you lose 3 and you attack with 3. You would get 2 attacks and you would lose roughly 6 planes. It could be more, it could be a little less, but that's just a general assumption. You would really pull out the 12 planes if you're expecting to have 2 damage interactions. You're going to be able to go in and hit something, spin around, go in and hit something again. Otherwise, you're going to start pre-dropping, which is exactly what he does here. My question on the pre-drop. Okay, so we've gone down to 9 planes, but what has that done for us? So if we end up losing 3 planes on an attack, and we attack with 3 planes, that leaves us 3, which means we don't get to do anything. So 1 pre-drop doesn't technically change an outcome. 1 pre-drop only means that you have 6 planes to lose in order to get your 3 planes through, instead of 9 planes to lose to get your 1 attack through. And realistically, you don't want to lose that many planes anyway. So if you were going to pre-drop once, unless you're going against something with just about no AA, you're probably pre-dropping twice, because this tells to me that you're making a single attack. You are going in, taking the losses, making the attack, and then you're on to the next flight. You're not trying to get a return attack. You're trying to go for a one-way strike. So here, starting off, I think a Haragumo is spotted. He's going to, I believe, drop a fighter over here to kind of keep it lit for his team to take some shots at, because unless this thing is going to fire its guns, it may go dark when the AA is no longer in range. And he's going to spot, looks like, yes, it's got a cruiser and a battleship. I don't know the Hizen's AA off the top of my head. Zuma is a cruiser. Cruiser's going to have some spice, but you also have to remember at higher tier, flak counts go up. So the way that flak works is, I believe it's 80% of flak lands in the center, meaning ahead of your planes to some extent, either directly ahead or a little variance left to right, basically ahead of the flight path. And then the remaining 20%, if I'm remembering all this correctly, it's been a little while, will drop out to the sides. So theoretically, if you had 7 flak, you might have 5 in the center and 2 on the sides. Or if you had 10 flak, you might have 8 in the center and 2 on the sides, or something of that nature. That being said, that center can only be filled up with 8. Any more flak, which doesn't necessarily just come off your ship, but other ships that are adding flak into this thing. So if we just eyeball guess this, that the Azuma has, we'll say 8 flak puffs. And let's say the Hizen has 7 flak puffs. Those are going to overlap to be 15, which is a lot. So the stuff that's directly in front of your plane is going to be about 8, which means that there's going to be 7 which are going to spill over onto the left and the right of that center area. So if you're trying to maneuver, you may end up encountering flak that's even off to your left or right in that extreme, so the maneuvering might still get you beat up. Worth remembering that. But that does lead to, this is probably a one-way trip. And we're going to talk even about the use of bombers as an opener, but we'll get there. So the Harugumo is going to light off, pop some fire, pop some flak here. I would actually say that this turn would not have been correct, because you're not going to do anything to the Harugumo. You've already got it lit by a fighter. Turning to the left here is going to keep it you're going to keep it in its AA range, which just means you're going to lose more planes. Whereas you were already kind of positioned, if we go back just a bit, as soon as you caught the Harugumo, you started making a hard turn off to the right, and the hard turn, your plane's going to be lined up in a direction, the flak is going to be in front of you, and as you're hard turning, you're going to be turning away from where that center flak is. Since this is only one ship firing, most of it's going to be in the center. So you are turning away from the center line of where the planes are currently flying, which means you're pulling away from where the flak is being thrown. Turning back in right here, instead of continuing your turn out to the right, is going to move you back into the center line of where that flak is being thrown. And it does look like we have a bit of an interaction there as we move to where the gunners were expecting you to be, so to speak. If you had continued turning to right, you already had the fighter that was spotting, and you would have just gotten further and further away from the Harugumo, which means you would have been out of AA range. So you would not have taken flak there, you wouldn't have taken some losses. Realistically, you only lost about 2 planes, 2.5 planes, which took some flak there, so, I mean, that's spicy, but the bombers and stuff, IJN tends to have a lot of bullets in the clip, and they reload each bullet kind of quick-ish. So you lose a plane here and there, it's the price of doing business. But when you start losing a bunch of them, you start running the ammo low, and then, you know, your clip is out. So the other thing is, turning left here puts you off the line for the Hizen and the Azuma, as you are moving away from their direction of travel. So then you have to move back and correct for that, which is not technically a bad thing. It's just probably not the optimal choice. Okay, so moving in on the Hizen, you got a rough line on where he's coming in, and we start to see the flak coming out. There's a whole bunch in the center with some off on the sides as they both join in. Once you get to 3.5 is where the flak's not going to work anymore, but we had planes shoot up. We sent back 3. We've lost about 3 because of a surprise interaction and taking some flak, and now we're starting to work on this. So again, let's look at the Azuma and the Hizen. If you're going after a single tier 10 with IJN planes, which are generally not as healthy as other planes, you would expect to lose 2 planes coming in. Maybe 3. If they're spec'd, they have the flag and stuff, whatever, they're quick on their priority sector, whatever. That's a single tier 10 with, you know, basic cruiser levels of AA. Now we also have a battleship. Okay, I don't really know what the battleship is off the top of my head, but I would assume that that's going to be another 1.5 to 2 planes. Which means just approaching this, we're already going to expect to lose 3 to 4. Maybe more. Taking some damage earlier is definitely a thing, but it's just taking some flak there hurts, but just continuous to get in. We've already lost 4, but again, we kind of lost like 2 to flak there because we got snipped, and we're going to lose these other 2 coming in to continuous probably before we drop. Might have actually gotten a drop off there. So doing the math, we've attacked something which is going to kill 4 planes going in. We took a little bonus damage, which ended up taking us down to 6, but that's already a tough attack. The question comes in, does attacking with your 3-plane attack squad, is that worth the loss of 4 planes? Potentially 5 planes if maybe the squad that drops even gets shot down as it's trying to leave, making it potentially even harder. I would say probably no. What I would suggest instead is, instead of using the AP bombers here, use torpedo bombers. You already know that there's a battleship and a cruiser. you already know that you can come over this island to interact with them. The problem, of course, is if you're going for the battleship, the cruiser might be in the way. There is an arming distance with the island, so that is certainly a thing. But you have a hardened enemy. You have a battleship and a cruiser, which is, again, a lot of AA. You're probably going to shoot down multiple planes, 3, 4, whatever. But you have a heal on your torpedo plane. So that initial attack, you can use that heal to mitigate the incoming damage while you're making that drop and assessing the scene. So coming over this island, the AA starts to light you up. You can pop the heal. If you have the heal commander skill, it's not going to just last 5 seconds. It'll last 5.5 seconds. Woo! But you're probably going to be able to get a drop. And typically with the Hakuryu, I would give an estimation of use 2, lose 2. Which means in general, if you're on your attack, you lose 2 planes just for the privilege of getting there to make the drop. And then you're using 2, you got about a 50% output rate, which is similar kind of what we talked to about the AP bombs. So that's acceptable. In this case, because it's a cruiser and a battleship, you might end up losing 3. But if you've got the heal is going to key off how many planes are in the squadron. So if you are literally coming out with 12 torpedo planes, I'm just going to make up a number and say they have 2,000 health each, because I don't remember the one perfectly off the top of my head. That's 24,000 health in the entire squadron. When you trigger the heal, you are healing half of that. You are healing 55% of that. So 12,000 something health over 5 seconds. The amount of AA that's coming in will probably be completely negated by that. Or your one attack, and then the consumable will go on cooldown for 2 minutes. So there's a long cooldown. It's not something you just get to spam, but it does mean that you'll be able to come in, drop your torps. Also, the torps are going to disrupt the movement of bots. They tend to see torps coming in and immediately start to evade, which can slow down their movement pattern. This just gives your team a little more time to get a beat on them as they're coming around the corner. That could be a good thing. Could be a bad thing. Really comes down to your personal preference and how the op is going to play out. But I've done it at tier 6 and tier 8, and I've never really had concerns. So I don't know. But if you decided to come over this island, maybe the cruiser is too close, but you pop your heal, you get your torps off into the battleship. As soon as the torps are dropped, you are entering into an attack animation, which means continuous does not occur during the attack animation, because I believe the rules of the animation is the animation needs to play out. And because of that, it doesn't get altered by damage during that time. It's not a huge amount, but if you're just gunning it, if you're going full speed with your boost, you should be able to drop maybe about here and zip on over, and then your camera will reacquire on the other side of the ship, and you'll start to take AA damage again when you're decently far from the cruiser, and still probably within the medium range of the battleship. But at this point, you can continue over. If you think, that is a little too spicy, I don't know if I can do anything with that, you could start to pre-drop and get it down to, say, 4 planes so that you have a one-way trip. You're coming in, you're losing 2, 3 planes, and you make a drop. So if you, for instance, had 6 planes, it's a one-way trip. The problem with the 6 planes is you're gonna say lose 3 on the way in, you're gonna drop with 2, and then that last lone plane probably just gets taken out while it's trying to retreat or whatever. And maybe you lose a plane off of the torpedoes because the AA is stacked. But still, opening strike, I would recommend torpedoes. Or I suppose you could do something with rockets with the island in the way. I don't know if you're going to be able to get the hit. That's probably a skill situation. If you're able to come over the island, get a spot on the battleship, you might actually be at a distance where you could shoot from an elevated position at an increased range because of the way that rockets work and strike. But it would probably be hard to do and kind of suck, and you would still have to pre-drop before you get there, because if you come in with 9 planes and you make that attack, you still have 6 on the field ready to get shot down by a bunch of AA. So it's really, the big thing is when you're planning those extra resources, you are planning those for follow-up attacks. If there are no follow-up attacks, which ideally you know when you are taking off from your boat, don't keep the planes for the follow-up attacks, because you're just putting extra chips on the poker table to, risk to lose for no benefit. Okay, so next one, we're going to go off with rockets. Cool. So here we are at the elevated position of the island. And yeah, so having this higher position, it can be a little tough. Oh, okay. So this must have been a replay. because we can see that that reticle was not on the ship. So replays have a small discrepancy between where the reticle was actually placed and where it was shot. So in this case, it looked like it was past the Azuma, but it was actually on target. So here, you did actually come over the island, and cool, it was a nice skill shot, but we have two problems. We're going to talk about Hidden Menace again. We have two problems. You'll notice this plane right here. That plane doesn't look like it's climbing for cloud cover. So let's go back. I'm trying to get the... All right, we've done the bombing run. We're going to come over here, and we're going to make this strike. So there's the strike, and let's try to watch this. We've got these striking and these leaving. And two of them did get out. They got out. We could see that one of them was able to get away fairly quickly, I would say. And then these are the three that are striking. After they make the strike, they are leaving and end up losing two there as well. Looks like, actually, we lost all three of the initial, which could have been Hidden Menace just got roasted by some flak from the Hizen. So again, we have to pay attention to that recall. And then secondly, your CV is so close to these targets, the planes are not necessarily going to go all the way up to cloud cover, so to speak, where they go full immune. They may go up and then start their descent toward the carrier to land on the carrier, which means they may be below the immunity zone while trying to return and get shot down by these ships while they're still low. If you've ever, for instance, parked next to an enemy CV and a kid or something where your AA is just going off, you'll shoot planes as they are taking off from the carrier. You will shoot planes as they are coming down to land on the carrier. Those are both vulnerability times for those planes. And again, you might actually be so close that unless this island is blocking that line of sight, they may be taking AA while they're just trying to get back to your carrier. And it looks like only one plane got out. So here we could have used a heal. Got one torp, which is pretty big. So this is one of the things you can, right off the bat, you can go in there using this heal. And you actually use the heal, I think, late. We're going to look at this torpedo run again. So we've started the run. We've started taking AA. AA is typically going to pick up about 3.5 to 4 kilometers from the target. That's when the mid-range AA is going to start kicking in. And like long range tends to be 100, maybe 200 DPS. Mid-range can kick in an additional 3 to 400. So if we just go on the low end of that, outside of that, say 3.5, 4 kilometers, you're taking 100 damage per second. 2,000 health planes, that's 20 seconds per plane. Then you get within that medium range and it goes up by another 300, you're at 400 damage a second. That's 5 seconds a plane. That's a big difference. If it's a higher number, if it's 200 and an additional 400 goes up to 600, that's 3.5 seconds per plane. And if you get even closer still, you'll encounter some short range AA. In this case, you're going to be going after the Azuma, and very soon the Hizen is going to start working on you with some long range. So not only will you have medium range of the Hizen, or Azuma, you'll have even more from the Hizen coming in. Which means right about here is when the heal should start. Now, if you were in a PvP situation and somebody used Priority Sector takes a percentage chunk of all of your squadron health. So if we just keep it simple math, 5% of 12 planes is 60% of a plane. And since it's all that damage will be funneled into a single plane, that means 60% of a plane gets wiped away with a button push. And then if the Hizen also hits that button, technically your health has gone down a little, so 59% of a plane is going to kill that plane. Which means in a PvP situation, you need to kind of identify when that initial hit comes in and try to kick off that heal somewhere about mid-range, because maybe you can heal through the initial priority target or priority sector, instant damage, as well as the bulked up medium, and have that buffer for when the next priority target comes in and hits you to try to save this 12th plane. Because right now the 12th plane is tanking. But we're coming in here, we don't have the heal running. We're going to make this drop after we've lost 2 planes, 2.5 planes. We go ahead and make this drop. Or was it? 2 of them left, I think. So we lost 1 and we have half damaged. 2 of them dropped. Still haven't healed. And now we heal on the outbound after we lost another plane. So we've used 2, we've lost 2, started to work on the next one, and then there's a heal. It would have been best to use the heal 3.5 clicks out, which means you're probably not even going to lose any planes coming in because your heal is going to counteract the clustered ship effect. And then you will be able to make your drop of 2 and whiz out. And as long as you did it like 3.5 clicks, that 5 seconds should be enough for you to be able to get in, make the drop. There will be a little immunity window, and you might even have a little health on the tail end when you're zooming out of it, so that you can kind of like you can get away, like we saw. Well, I guess the heal was a little late. So in this case, we see a cruiser, but at this point you have an isolated Hizen. It's no longer overlapped AA, so this is a really good time for you to come in, strike this, spin around, strike it again, although I think your teammates, I mean, they're looking for something to do, so they're going to digest it. And by the way, you got some secondary hits, which is pretty cool. So yeehaw on that. More scouting. Again, if we had 2 points in the commander skill where we could drop fighters, that'd be cool. One thing, cool little note about fighters. So right now, your planes are pointed up at, say, 11:30 on a clock face. If you drop fighters, the fighters are placed on like a mirror axis of the up and down line in the northern or southern hemisphere. Wow, what the hell did he just say? It means that if you dropped fighters and you're pointed at 11:30, those fighters will appear at 12:30 on the clock face. They will mirror for the up and down 12 to 6. They'll mirror on that axis. And because you are pointed up in the northern hemisphere of the circle, that's where they're going to mirror. If you were instead pointed in the southern hemisphere at, say, 8 o'clock, then they would mirror on that 6 o'clock axis and appear at 4 o'clock as they're coming in. Why does this all matter? Because in the way that this is pointing right now, if you dropped it, your fighters would drop somewhere over at like the edge of B4, almost at B5, and be able to give some good spotting on what's up there before you decide to commit, if you wanted to commit. But it's just, that's a trick for kind of revealing stuff at range. Whereas if you were pointed maybe at a different way, you might spawn the fighters farther away from where the enemy ships are, and you might not actually get the visual. So just a cool little thing there. All right, so again, people that are playing the game want to play the game. So you are trying to have some ship interactions, but you are getting close to 3 cruisers. I didn't see what the cruisers are, but again, we have to assume high tier. If you're just having long range interactions and you're not taking flak, you're probably going to lose a plane. But you have 2 cruisers, means you probably lose 2 planes. But you have 3 cruisers, which means if that one gets interaction, you might even lose another one. Because when you spend time in AA, you tend to spend not just 3 seconds, not just 5 seconds, you tend to spend about 7 to 10 when you're really having an interaction. And it depends on what the long range AA of the thing is, but again, 200 DPS at long range against a 2000 health plane is a kill in 10 seconds. If you end up eating flak, it's even worse. So just a thing to be aware of. But here we're taking a shot on a ship that we can't see. Good news is it's isolated in terms of AA because there's an island blocking. But trying to hit something you can't see is tough. You don't necessarily have the time to line up the shot, and it's not going to connect. So you got 1 torp earlier, which is nice. Okay, so next up, you are playing the Sucuryu. Sucuryu has a Hakuryu's worth of stuff and some tacticals. And the tacticals in the operation are probably going to be bread and butter because you are fighting crap loads of AA. So here we've got some rocket planes. We need to use the rocket planes, which maybe is what you just recalled for, or looks like yes. So you're using the tacticals. You got the 3-plane rocket squad, so that is cool. So big thing is we as CV players, or when playing a CV, whatever, you're always going to be trying to peck at the outside coming in. Like you're working on the crust of the sandwich. You're not taking a bite out of the center of the sandwich. You bite from the outside in. So these rockets are likely going for this Azuma or for this Yoshino in a way where the rockets are coming at outside of those cruisers long range if you can. You don't have a ton of health with these. It's only 3 planes. They have, looks like, maybe 1,400 health each. Am I seeing that right? 1,400? No, it's a little more than that. Maybe 1,800 health each. which means you're probably losing 1 coming in, maybe 2, although you will be able to come in at a pretty good zip. Yeah, so you're zipping up to 300 something, so you're going to take this shot. All right, so again, the reticle is not correct because it's a replay, so it's a little desynced, but you were actually able to take a good shot. Tactical squadrons do not return to the carrier, so if you lose them, you know, it's okay. You lose them, they get burned. It looks like a crap load of torps are coming over there. Azuma eats some. Clausewitz eats some. Ideally, you're going to time this so that you're not taking AA off of a ship that's already dead. But feast or famine, you know, you're trying to get in there. You're trying to do stuff and pew pew. So to go back to the detection right now, in terms of let's imagine your detection was 2.5 kilometers larger than it is. There's a battleship right next to you that all the enemy ships are going to see anyway. So are they even going to shoot you? Probably not. The concealment's just not going to matter very much there. So the concealment mod in slot 5 could probably be replaced with a consumable mod, which gives you 10% additional consumable duration. Not going to be that big of a deal, but if you're able to drop a fighter that can give some information and doesn't get shot down for its 60 seconds, it's an additional 6 seconds of spotting. Woo. Or wait, no, I'm sorry, the consumable mod was changed. It was changed from duration to additional consumables, which means you would have potentially some additional fighters as well as an additional heal on your torpedoes. So that's an option. Or the consumable mod, the slot 5 could be changed to, okay, so we're at what, 840 something? We're going to go back here to the equipment. The slot 5 could be changed to the flight deck mod. Flight deck mod gives you 2 additional planes for your base squadron. So that's 2 additional rocket planes, 2 additional torpedoes, 2 additional bombs at the start of the match because you have more space on the deck. You just start with those bonus planes. And you have some additional regen time, which not only means that you'll have access to those planes a little faster, which is cool, you will also get access to the tactical squadrons faster. So that is useful as well. So this concealment, I would consider swapping this out. You could do consumable where you get the bonus heal. You could do flight deck where you get the bonus planes. And tacticals, which is also going to be spicy. Because I just don't know if this consumable or the concealment is going to matter. Just not sure about that. So I think it was 845 is where we were. Secondary is doing secondary stuff. And currently Raptor is being repaired. So it looks like you are out scouting the next group, which I think is like 3 destroyers which come up from the south, looking to ambush Raptor as it comes out from cover, as well as there's a CV that's over in like H8, H9. So as you cut off to the east, you're going to spot a little parade of CV plus other stuff. And CV is going to be a hard target for you. This is true whether you're a tier 6 or super ship. CV is going to be a hard target because the CV is going to have fighters that are constantly circling that hull, which means you're probably expecting a one-way damage interaction. Now, you're using tactical torpedoes right now, so that is perfect to go after this Hakuryu. But it's worth noting, there's an Azuma worth of AA, there's a Hakuryu worth of AA, you have 2,500 health on these planes, which technically are buffed because you had the heal or the additional health off of your torpedo planes in slot 3, I think it was. But it could have a little more if we had the slot 6 mod where we had additional plane health. But I would expect we lose 1 plane, maybe both. Even though we're going to be able to zoom up to really, really fast speed. Ooh, that's overleading. You might be going for the DD here, but I think you actually go for the Hakuryu with this one-way trip. And that was a really far drop. Let's look at that again. Okay, so this reticle, again, we're looking at a replay, so this might be desynced, but this reticle means that if you start your attack and you don't change your speed at all, you don't speed up, you don't slow down, that is where the arming line will be as you lock in at full, best aiming, where the reticle is going to shrink and lock in at that finalized thing. Now you've got, it looks like you're starting this 8 kilometers out. This is, according to this, about 2.5 something kilometers away. So that's probably 5.5. Maybe this ends up being like 4.5 kilometers from target. But, all right, let's see where this, all right, so this is where the arming line was. And this is probably past where it actually is. So the arming line may have been back here. That might be a good drop for the CV, in which case you're saving the 2 planes. If it works out for you, mwah, chef's kiss. Typically, if you're not, typically you would not expect to be able to eyeball it at that distance. That's going to be, you know, skill issue. But if you can, that is skilled. Congrats to you. This is a little vexing to me, but the drop looks pretty straight up, which is, I don't know, maybe you're going to end up hitting that like a hammer. So follow up, we have 12 planes. If we end up striking the Hakuryu with the fighter overhead, the fighter that it has 5 or 6 planes in it, which when it latches is going to kill 5 or 6 planes worth of health. Now you have a heal, which heals, in this case, because you have 12 planes, 6 planes worth of health. So if it shoots down 6, but you heal 6, well, theoretically, that's a 0 outcome. You could use your heal and completely circumvent that. You will be taking AA from the CV, you will be taking AA from the cruiser, you'll be taking AA from the DD, which means it's not really going to go your way. There was a way the players were getting around this by using the consumable mod in its old form, which would increase duration of consumables by 50%. So that 50% heal, which would be basically 6 planes worth of healing out of 12, because you have a 12 plane squadron, would end up being like 9 planes worth of healing. And then if you further had the commander skill of an additional 10%, it'd be like 9.9 planes worth of healing. So you could strike a carrier, take that fighter, and just heal through it. And then the fighter's down, and then you're spinning around, you're striking it again. You're spinning around, you're striking again. This is a little different in the sense that there's a DD and a cruiser on top of it. So this is really where I would be pre-dropping already. You're expecting a one-way interaction. You are expecting to slam the CV hull, deal some damage, and get out. Nice fighter. Ideally, this is dropped a little further out because we can see it's already kind of on top. When you're dropping a fighter, you want to think of intercept. If the bombers are coming to your town to blow you up, you don't want to attack them. You don't want your fighters to be fighting the bombers while they are over your town, dropping the bombs, blowing your stuff up. You want the fighters to be intercepting before the bombers get there. So ideally, these planes are dropped further down. That being said, I mean, you dropped them as good as you could, so whatever. It's not a concern. But yes, pre-dropping, very, very important here, because this is very likely just a one-way trip. Might have gotten 1 torpedo hit there, but coming in with 10 planes. Okay, so that could have been skill drop. We could have used a heal here. The heal was a little late, and you can just see how extremely ouch that is. Could have been a skill drop if those are going to hit. Coming in, taking the drop with 2 left, again at a heavy distance. If you're able to drop down to 4 planes or 6 planes, then you can come in, lose 4, and get an accurate drop and hit those torps. Do the thing. The question is, do you want to trade that resource? Do you want to potentially make a strike that's going to lose you 4 planes on the inbound and potentially 2 planes on the outbound just to get 15k damage? Because that's roughly 2 Hakuryu torps. Probably even a little less if you're hitting a CV hull that has some decent torpedo protection, maybe 12 to 14. That could be a resource trade you want to do. You have like 18 to 20, depending on your loadout, on the deck. So if you're dropping 6 planes for 15k, you could do that 3 times. That's 45 into the Hakuryu. Is that going to take it out? Maybe not. It could be that you trying to strike enemy aerial assets is just a little too punishing, especially when they're grouped up. That may not be something you want to do. You might instead drop a fighter to keep them spotted. Looks like a battleship is already moving to intercept. Or you can make sure that you're using tactical squadrons when you're doing it, so at least that one-way trip, they're one-way squadrons. But it's going to be hard to pre-drop 3 times, 4 times to make a single drop with your torpedoes to then go out and do it again. That is, it is time consuming to do that many pre-drops. AP bombs, you have to literally hover over, and I don't know if you're going to get citadels, so that's a no. Rocket planes you might be able to make work, but this is a spicy level AA. Instead, looks like you are forward positioned, and you are getting some secondary hits off on some DDs. Hopefully you don't eat a crap load of torps here. But there's a lot going on, and forces are a little stretched thin with a battleship up in the north. And here we are making a hard run at a CV, but we're going directly over AA. So this is something that we're going to look at that last run here again. So you're going to take off, I think, with the tactical rockets, right? So looking at the scene, taking off with the TAC rockets, going over a Kitakazi, getting chewed, take one down, getting chewed, taking two down, and actually lose all three. So very important to remember when attacking a ship, the long range does some damage. Not a lot, some. Initially, with the 8.0 rework, there were some ships that had fantastic long range but poor short range or something because the actual performance of the guns was modeled. Players didn't appreciate that. Yes, it's realistic. Yes, it's simulation-esque, but players just, they were not appreciating, or they didn't want something that felt unreliable, something that felt, not intuitive. So the system got changed to long range doesn't do a lot, but it stacks with medium, so it does more, and even that stacks with short, which does a lot. So it all stacks, so it all gets stronger. All your guns are firing, pew, 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 even if something's too close to shoot at, whatever, it's all firing, it's all dealing damage. So long range will tend to be little, medium will tend to be more because it's medium plus long, and then short range will be all of those three. So flying over these DDs, like happened, means that you are taking long range now into medium, because 3.5 is roughly medium, and then even potentially into short, because you might have been within 2 kilometers there, and you're flying over this into more long, now medium, now short, into more long. Like, flying over a pre-existing ship is just going to shred the health on the planes. The planes are not meant to fly over stuff that they are not attacking. They will just get wrecked. At tier 6, AA is fairly poor. If you look at it historically, whatever, the ability for ships to even hit planes was tough. It got better and better as technology improved. Tier 6, in terms of if you just look at it from a gameplay angle, tier 4 CVs are really slow, not very strong. Tier 6 are more powerful, but still weak. But you start to have more of that gameplay. You start to see some flak. Not really enough to scare you, but you start to see some. The AA is enough that it'll chisel planes down over time, but the damage threat that the carrier has is not fantastic. So it takes time for the threat to occur. When you get to tier 8, though, the damage a tier 8 character can put out can be pretty notable, can be pretty scary. And the AA is stronger. The amount of flak is stronger. At tier 10, it is even more so. Super ship, even more so. It's trying to make this end run over an enemy ship. That's something you might be able to do at tier 4 and tier 6 and get away with, because the AA is going to be fairly light that you can make those drops. But when you get to those higher tiers, that's really a decision. That is potentially a lot of planes, a lot of resources getting roasted and not getting to their target. That's effectively if you wanted to make that shot on the CV hull, you're expecting to lose 2 planes off of a DD, another 2 planes off a DD, and another 1 to 2 planes coming in on that carrier, which means you're losing 6 planes to take a single rocket shot on a carrier, which might deal 7,000 damage. If that was with a 9-plane squadron using the tactical, they just all got slaughtered. So as much as you might want to have dealt with the carrier, you have to deal with its pickets first, because flying directly over them taking free damage, you don't have the health for that. You just don't. Okay, so AA got some secondaries doing the stuff. If we look at your resources, your rocket planes are low. You have 3. Torpedoes, you have 8. It's a sizable amount. That's definitely a usable amount. You could be working on this Azuma with torpedoes, assuming that the Azuma is alone. You can absolutely be ripping into them. Looks like there's a cruiser and potentially another cruiser or battleship to the south that might be able to have AA range on this. Although there's some decent distance there. I think you could probably come in with torps on the F line and be able to strike this without much overlapping AA. But okay, we've got bombs. So bombs here are going to be okay. You do end up eating some flak there and take the drop. So good, you immediately get out. And it does look like we have planes returning. Oh, nope, looks like they got mowed down. So why did they get mowed down? 2 things. 1, Hidden Menace is going to make your planes more vulnerable to flak. You have that concealment advantage that it gives you, which is good. But there are disadvantages that come with it. And your resources being able to live through it takes a bit of a hit. Secondly, you are so close to this enemy ship that not only do your planes run up to cloud cover, they have to come down from cloud cover to land. And while they're doing it, they're taking AA damage. So I did mention I'd be using torps on this, and I would. But realistically, the Azuma is so close to your hull that as your planes are attempting to return to your carrier, they will probably get shot down. It wouldn't be a bad idea if instead of taking point in the secure you and trying to secure the front line, that you actually pulled back and you were playing where Raptor was, because that would give your planes the ability to have some distance between that frontline threat while they are returning to the carrier and not just taking AA while they're trying to land. Because that's a sustained amount of AA that's going to be several seconds from them to try to come down and land on the deck, where you're just going to end up losing planes. But I do think the strike on the Azuma was okay. The only thing to point out here is, again, as you're moving, the flak gunners try to lead the target. So where are you going forward, that's where the flak's going to be. So you're in a hard turn, so there's flak over off to your right that you don't even see right now because you're turning so hard. You're continuing the turn, more flak comes out, and it runs off to your right because that's where your planes were pointed at the time and they're leading. But now you're leading directly at the Azuma. It's 4.6 away, which means you're probably going to get another round of flak. There it is. It's between you and the Azuma. Now, within 3.5, no more flak is going to be fired off the deck at a new location. But it doesn't mean that the gunners aren't locked into the current location, hammering away at it, and that's exactly what happens. Bop, bop, bop. We take some flak damage there. It does look like they were able to get one last burst off before you were too close to have the interactions. But that flak I don't think mattered. It was the prior one that did. So took a bunch of damage. You're able to get this drop and you immediately recall, which is good, because if you stayed around at all, you'd just be flying closer to the enemies in the south, which would mean even more AA threats. So this guy is exposed. You're doing the thing. Cool. The only thing I can say is that turn in at the last turn in, you probably need to measure that out a little further so that you continued some left turns, some left turns, some left turns, so that you could juke the flak gunners instead of having flak between where you needed to start your attack and where the target was, meaning you were just going to go right through it. You got to set that line a little different. But otherwise is okay. Good hit. Triple sit, yeehaw. Dipping into some smoke or whatever. I mean, you're full health at this point. If the enemy wants to shoot you, that's fine, because otherwise they're shooting a friend, and your friend doesn't have the health to deal with it. So whatever. So at this point, you're down to 4. You're down to 4 bombers. So let's think about it this way. Do a little thought experiment. Do you actually have AP bombers? The answer is kind of no. Kind of yes, but kind of no. Why? Because to attack a single cruiser that's of this tier, tier 10, tier or super ship, whatever, you're probably losing, say, 2 planes. Just as a baseline, like the cost to attack is 2 planes. Coming in with 4, you lose 2, you might lose 3, so you're dropping 1, maybe 2 bombs. Is that enough to even make the trip? Maybe. It's not that it's bad. But at the out end of that, you might have all of those planes dead. And you You did what you did. I hope it mattered. So effectively, you don't really have AP bombs. Do you have rockets? You have 4. Again, you're going to lose like 2, maybe 3 planes. So you're going to strike with 1, 2 rockets. So you really don't have rockets. So you have torps. Is there something you can use torps on? Yes, you can use torps on the CV. But you need to be pre-dropping to get it down to about 4 planes remaining. Yeah, 3 or 4 planes remaining, and then make sure you use a heal on the way in so that you're not losing planes on the way in. You make a drop, you hit the hull. And then you can do it again. Get down to 4, make the drop, hit the hull. So you could definitely be working on the CV over here, or you could try to be working on the cruiser that's on the G line, coming in from an angle where those other ships AA is not going to be able to support. You're pecking in on the outside. You're chewing at the crust of the sandwich, not biting into the center of it. So we're going to continue. Speed this up a little bit. All right, so I have to assume you're looking at the CV, but you are not. I mean, the CV might get taken out by your other teammates here. Okay, so the Yoshino's getting chewed up. Probably not going to work on the Yoshino. You have your tactical squadron here. And this point would absolutely be a long drop. And that is A-okay. You made a long drop. Does look like there was a little bit of spread there. But you were able to get all of the planes off, which is nice. The one thing I would recommend is it felt like you were going full speed down the 1 line, making a hard turn and then trying to speed up. It might actually have been worth trying to go down the 1 line to about the F area at slow speeds. Pick your line and then commit to the line. Because you really want to make sure you're aiming. If you're going to spend 20, 30, 40, 50 seconds making an attack on something, make sure it hits. If you can't make sure it hits, then you just threw away 20, 30, 40 seconds and potentially resources as well. And that's just no good. So rather than, trying to make it happen quickly, make sure that it happens. So I would recommend that. So you got torps coming out. They do not connect. So that definitely would have been a thing to do. Take a little more measured time. And just to point out, you could have struck the CV. Your teammates might be working the CV, but they're not currently. And this is a group of AA death. 3 ships on top of each other that are going to hammer whatever you throw at them. Might as well just strike the CV. It's isolated, or at least it looks isolated. So here we're coming in with the 3 rocket planes. Gonna lose 1, gonna lose just the 1. The other 2 get to fire off. Did some damage, maybe. You're up to 182,000, so you are contributing. Although these higher tier ops, some of the enemy health pools are so huge that you really are expecting to get some pretty gnarly damage numbers here. And again, your CV is leading the way. So you're not a secondary battleship. You are a CV hull. You don't have the heal. It's cool that you've got div mates dropping you smoke, but not necessarily what your base function is. We didn't heal during that attack. We're still not healing during this attack. We lost several planes and we didn't ever use a heal. So let's look at that again. We're coming out with 11 planes. We're going into a triple strike here. Now down to 2. We're going to lose 1 plane. Going to lose half of another. Cool. Right now is an excellent time to just drop that heal. Because you're kind of buried in this AA and now you're sharing this other one. There's no reason to just take the damage for free, especially while you're aiming. Lose, I think, 3 planes there that you could have saved all 3 of them, gotten out the other side, and been able to have some resources coming back. But at present, it looks like no planes are returning, so your torps are gone. And you have a bomb strike, which is coming on the Yoshino. Again, you picked a line that you're coming in on, and we have that flak wall because the gunners are leading your current direction. It does look like you took some flak there, although the wall was close to where you started your attack, so you kind of dipped over it a bit. Making the drop, looks like 2. Yeah. And still making the secondaries happen. So, okay, so if we remove the the concealment upgrade from slot 5, that gives us 2 additional planes of each type. So instead of maybe 7 rocket planes, you're currently sitting at 9. Instead of 1 torpedo plane, you're currently sitting at 3. This is ignoring all of the actual conditions of what's going on, but it's giving you just a rough concept. And instead of 0-12, you've got 2. Again, It's probably not real because those planes would have been used in other strikes and blah, blah, blah. But the other thing is you're going to have that 5% regen reduction, which means instead of these rocket planes being 10 seconds off, now 13 minutes into this match, you've had these rocket planes for probably 10 or 15 seconds by now. Instead of these torpedo planes being 37 seconds off, you may have had these up by now, or they're like 10 seconds off. So it's not about you having more planes for the entirety of the match. You might only get like 4 uses of the torpedo tactical squadrons. But when you get those 4 uses, they are slightly earlier, which means you have more resources available for you to choose from. And CVs are an extremely decision-based class. How are you using your resources? It depends on what resources you have to use. So could be very useful to use the flight deck mod in slot 5. So you again have these resources. So you're firing off with some secondaries. I don't know if there's another wave. I kind of feel like there's one more for this last push, but this might be a success at this point. Because there's still a good amount of time. There's like 3 or 4 minutes, and yeah, okay. So the Hawk is still up. Oh, okay. So already we should have dropped this fighter potentially just slightly earlier. Because if we were able to spot it, you know, just get in slightly closer, because the fighters are going to go to where we drop them, and they're going to move, and then drop. Because the closer you get, the more possible that it's going to be in the AA range of the enemy ship. So, do a little damage, you get a little fire. CV is almost off the map. It's going to be pretty tough for some long shots, maybe off of a battleship here. You got a tactical squad can hit like a hammer. So we're going full speed here. CV is turning out. I do think the bots kind of understand incoming torp threats, so it might be seeing the line the torps are coming in and starting to juke. But going super speed, we need to make sure that this reticle, if we are not changing our speed, not speeding up, not slowing down, that is where the reticle locks in. Accurate. We need to make sure that we have this where it's a good point relative to the target. I would not start the attack. Let's go back just a little bit here. You don't want to start the attack, and I don't think you did. Well, okay, you kind of did. You don't want to start the attack where the reticle is like almost next to the side of the ship, because it's going to take time to firm up the reticle. What you can do instead is, where this reticle is like almost to the side of the ship, you start the attack back here. Because after your aiming phase, you're going to come in, and it's going to lock in, and you're going to have the green light to drop. That green light lasts like 6 seconds, which means you could even start it when the reticle's back here, and then you have 6 seconds to go all the way up here to make that drop. You could do that if you wanted to. So it's definitely helpful with rocket planes, with torps, whatever, to have the reticle at a slight distance or a decent distance from the ship, because you have that attack, the 4, 6, whatever seconds, 8 seconds of attack. And I think for torps, it's like 10. You can increase it out to 15, which is huge if you want. But so you have lots of room here. So you don't necessarily want to be actually dropping in outer space, although yes, that is a way to lessen the incoming AA. But you do want to make sure that you have enough room that you can fully zone in that shot, because if you're going to take 20, 30, 40 seconds to make an attack on something, make sure it hits. Don't waste your time, make sure it hits. Okay, so that reticle was like right on the line, and again, this is a replay, so the reticle formation might not be perfectly great, but we get a drop with 1 plane, and we get 2 hits, so good that we got that. Yeehaw. And yes, it does look like there is one last wave for the CV's last push, the Raptor's last push to get the heck out. Dropping the fighter again to try to keep this lit, which is cool in case maybe the cruisers or the battleships are going to be able to take it out. Because that is one of the missions. Now, yes, Securyu, I think, if it's got the faster fighters, I think it had normal fighters, but maybe that changed. Maybe it released with normal fighters, but it changed where it had the like 30-second fighters or something, the shorter duration fighters. Anyway, so one of the objectives didn't get met because one of the CVs wasn't taken out. Is what it is. You did a crap load of damage. Maybe this is a little low for ops, but there were some resource options in there that I think could have been done a little differently. We go back to the equipment. So you got 560 secondary hits. So obviously the secondaries, they did some work. Are you going to show? Here we go. Showing secondary batteries did 142,000 damage, which is pretty gnarly. You got another 96k off of fire. So that's a crap load. In terms of aircraft, you had 81k. In terms of tacticals, you had 28. So, yay math, 109. So, yeah, the secondaries probably beat the ever-living crap out of that, although some of the fires might have been from the rocket planes. I think there could have been a little more nuance in the plane play. You took some rough flak interactions. You lost a bunch of torpedo planes while having a heal available. The initial attack with AP bombers, I think, lost you more than you probably were expecting. And there was a tactical that didn't connect because you flew over some enemy planes. In terms of working on an enemy CV hull, you just need to make sure that you're pre-dropping so that any strike is only losing the amount of planes that it needs to lose. And yeah, so hopefully this was useful. Fingers crossed. If it was, please let me know. I will upload this to my YouTube channel and drop you a link, and then you can peruse it at your leisure. Yeehaw! So that was from Forgotten Void. Forgotten Void does a lot of operation stuff, and I think recently joined the wiki team. Hey. So yeah, rawr. Have a good one.